All right, everybody, thank you for coming. This is the 7th Stakeholder Workgroup for West Baltimore United. Again, I'm Brendan with Baltimore City DOT, with Tavia Gamble, our consultant project manager. We also have Eric James here from Community Engagement, and I think Andrea as well, somewhere from Community Engagement. So just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. So Eric is here. We're having a hybrid meeting today, and moving forward, we'll be doing hybrid meetings so that the public will be able to listen in and be apprised of all of the updates that we're providing in the discussion as well. A second update is the contract for the new consultant team. So we anticipate that the contract will go to the Board of Estimates later this month, and then we'll get notice to proceed and start the work proper in early July. So we may not have a meeting in June because the work will actually begin in July. So stay tuned for updates on that. So the work for the rest of this project will continue again in July because we're bringing on a new consultant team. I also want to just recognize that we have 2 new stakeholder work group members, Denise Griffin and Daniela Greenman. Both of them are here today. I just want to give a very brief, allow them to give a very brief introduction of who they are for your benefit. So I'm going to mute this, and then Eric will unmute the mic. Good? Okay. So Denise, you want to start us off?
Hello, Dr. Good evening, everyone. I'm Denise Johnson, and I am a cultural organizer, a native of West Baltimore. Done a lot of work around cultural organizing, which is integrating arts into conversations about West Baltimore values, West Baltimore place of belonging and connections, and its heritage. Did a very extensive project around the highway nowhere some years ago, the project that ended up with a national platform where we traveled talking about West Baltimore and a great old national festival to celebrate ourselves. And that work has continued to incorporate economics to the framework of culture. Thank you for having me.
Daniela.
I am Daniela Greenman. First of all, honored to be with you all today, so thank you for having me. I serve as the Director of Community Impact for Baltimore Public Markets. I am fairly new to the markets. I've been was previously with the Baltimore Office of Promotion of the Arts for 3 years. I'm a transplant to Baltimore, so I got here in 2021, first working with the Mayor's Office of Community and Economic Development. So I've been very much like Denise, kind of staked in the arts and culture world, especially in Baltimore. Since I've been here, my background is mostly in workforce development, media, and event planning. So happy to be with you all, and hopefully I can be a great contribution.
Welcome. Thank you both. We're excited to have you. Eric, I'm gonna talk here now. Okay. So our first presenter will be with the red line. Tonight's agenda is covering projects that are happening simultaneously along with West Baltimore United. So our first presenter will be Matt Hendrickson from the red line.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I guess I'm first. As you can see, as you saw previously, there was several projects happening in West Baltimore. We're all working together and trying to collaborate where we can. And just excited to be with you and share some information about the Red Line. How many of you have heard about the Red Line? Okay, well, I'm done. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. So we'll just give a little bit of background. There's some history I think you guys are all familiar with, but it's a proposed 14-mile transit project from Woodlawn in Baltimore County through West Baltimore to downtown, and then back out to the county to Bayview, Johns Hopkins Hospital in Bayview. It's a high need and also high quality transit investment for this, not just for the city of Baltimore, but for the region. And it's something that it's something that keeps coming back because we recognize how important it is for the city and for the region. I think you guys are pretty familiar with this. Again, this is something that's been talked about for a long time. It's gotten federal funding. It was about to be built. It got canceled, and then we brought it back. And we continue to look at all of those qualities that make it important, which is we really need a direct kind of transit line and access east-west, right? And so that's what we're building towards, and we're going to continue this. And then we had Governor Moore bringing this back. He's been incredibly supportive of this project. And then we announced our kind of mode selection when we evaluated kind of bus rapid transit versus light rail. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But part of that process as far as bringing that back is that we're getting out into the community and doing things just like this and talking to people. And I think the big push for us last year was going through some of these route alternatives that we're still evaluating and bringing that to the public. So that's what I want the focus of this to be, is like what we're looking at realistically as far as what our alternatives and alignments are, including right here through West Baltimore. But we had a series of 5 public open houses throughout the city in the fall, and we're going to continue to engage with the public as we take this project forward. And so I kind of think of this as the, okay, so dating myself a little bit, the Jerry Lewis kind of telethons, like this is the telethon number, right? Every time we go out to an engagement, we're contacting more people and opportunities to meet with folks and get feedback. Good evening. All right, and this is just and I'm just gonna skip ahead on the action, but as you can see, you know, we're out within the community and kind of, again, we're in the planning phase of this project. We're planners. We love to look at maps. We love to get the, draw it on the table and get people's comments. But again, just going through like pop-ups, community events, work groups, just wherever we can get the word out to folks about the project. And so, and I think this is a part of the, not just the need as far as high quality transit, but then the other benefits. And this is a real strong economic case for building the Red Line. This is what you see here is a report from the Greater Washington Partnership and the Greater Baltimore Committee, GBC, which is a kind of a conglomerate of kind of business interests and trying to spur investment here in the Baltimore region. And the impacts of the Red Line are projected to be up to $10 to $19 billion of not just of construction and adjacent development across the entire corridor, east to west. And so not only is it just the economic benefits, but also the total number of jobs. So looking at 1,400 plus permanent jobs just on the Red Line alone, including 4,600 permanent jobs for the respective types of developments around the corridor. And that just kind of speaks to the future, the economic future of Baltimore and the region, and that return on investment within a transit project, and this transit project in particular. And that investment and what it means for people that live here, right? You can see from the graph, basically, we talked about that high need, people traveling east to west, and the challenges that you face getting to where you need to go, whether it's going to the grocery store, to your doctor's appointments, getting to and from work or school, right? So We know that there's challenges with our current system. We know that there's challenges for a city where 30% of most households within the city do not have access to a personal vehicle. That's 3 times the national average. But it's also pretty similar to Carlos households in DC, but they have a robust transit network, right? And so what we're trying to do is build up to serve that need, including our students, low-income individuals, as well as, and again, just kind of highlighting some of the sustainability, positive sustainability issues as far as greenhouse gases and impacts that transit can bring. All right, and where we are today. We talked about the mode. So we looked at bus rapid transit as well as light rail. One, we're MTA. We love our buses. Don't get us wrong. We have a huge, robust bus network that serves other folks, but we did decide to go with light rail because of that, especially these 2 top categories, the ridership potential, because buses can only carry so many, you can't expand on your light rail. And because of that higher ridership potential, you can get a more effective cost per rider. Okay, thank you. So I appreciate that. And again, we love our buses, don't get me wrong, but right now we are a light rail project and we're excited to bring that. And again, the other piece is kind of where, I think that last one is Denise, the community input. We heard from you and, again, we're excited to bring this light rail forward. And kind of, these are the kind of measures of effectiveness to be used within that kind of conversation. Here's a kind of station placement, and I just kind of want to highlight kind of the modern station and amenities of what it could look like. Center running, the platforms, covered platforms, you have wayfinding, you have ADA accessibility, and then you also have kind of, I think what's really cool about Baltimore is that we have complete streets legislation. So it's not just the stations themselves, it's about how you get to and from the stations, whether walking or biking or how you're accessing transit. We know that transit is the big people movers, right? We can really move a lot more people more effectively and quickly through transit. And so these are a couple more amenities that we can provide to do that. All right, and so here's the kind of big piece that we're looking at. One, well, let's say there's 3 alternatives, but how we kind of place them is the routing, as well as kind of tunnel versus surface, and the overall alignments, as you can see here. Through this area, I'm not going to get into a little bit more detail, but kind of the overview of the differences. 2A, this black line you can kind of see as a couplet. Where you see the dashed lines is where there is tunnel rather than surface. And then again, just some of the just minor alterations as far as how it will travel within those differences.
Have you all made a decision about which one?
We are still in that process right now. And for those online, I don't know who all's online, but if you didn't hear the question, maybe you did. We're still making that decision as far as what that route alternative. Here it is coming through West Baltimore. Here's a inset picture of what a center running kind of would look like here on Edmondson Avenue. And then a couple other kind of iterations as far as options here at Route 40 at the Highway to Nowhere. And so see, these are just some of the things that we're still evaluating, whether it's this option here on the bottom running through the freeway, running on the north side on Franklin, or splitting it up on both sides on one line on Franklin, and then one in the opposite direction on Mulberry. So
It's like within the highway, nowhere, like one of those edges.
that's the third option, would be right down the middle. Yeah. So
So for the west, Franklin, so you're talking about, okay, I'm just trying to visualize.
Yeah.
It's concrete slab.
yeah.
You get Franklin, so are you talking about within the slab and Franklin?
So the 2 top alternatives, one is split on top. So yeah, so there's a kind of grassy area. So you would take that kind of area that's being underutilized and the existing roadway and build along there. That's these 2 options. This option number 2 would kind of squeeze those together a little bit on that north side. And then you'd be able to kind of make that turn across the freeway to get down back onto MLK. That would then bring you into downtown.
What do you think about across the freeway?
Oh, I did. Yes, I mean, I think it's just that. Yes. Yes.
If you have a question, please raise your hand. We can move on as soon as you got the mic. So we'll live.
And you can see, yeah, go ahead, Brent.
Question period at the end of each presentation. We're going to unmute the mic that's in the center of this semicircle here, so that the people online can better hear us. And so these only questions.
All right, so we're gonna hold, yeah, for those online, we're gonna hold the questions till the end so you guys can hear the questions. So I'm reacting to some of the comments in the room. But we'll come back to this slide for some of those particular questions. All right, what's next? I think that's been alluded to. We're evaluating these one by one, those different segments and sections within those key considerations, right? So as you could see, there were quite a few considerations that we would have to work through and that we are working through within the Route 40 alignment. Similar to the Southeast, there's still a lot of unknowns. There's been a lot of recent development and trying to work through and around those areas. And so for each of these different sections, we've kind of broken them out into what are those key questions, and we're continuing to evaluate those as we move the project forward. And obviously that requires a lot of partnership. So being in the room with you all, as well as the partners in the room that you're also going to hear presentations about, including West Baltimore United. So thank you guys for all participating within this, and also for having me to be able to present to you this information on the red line. We really need to be in tandem and working together to deliver and maximize our opportunity with each of these different projects. So we're not working in silos. We're here partnering with the city and with you all. The other kind of thing that we have coming up as far as our engagement is a community compact, which is a series of commitments from the different city agencies, MTA, Baltimore City, and Baltimore County. We have consistent meetings with them as far as coordination and continuing to have stakeholders like yourselves in the room to sign on for the different types of benefits that we would talk about, whether it's workforce development or affordable housing. And then we're going to continue to do all of the things that you saw for that telethon and adding to those numbers as far as engaging with as many people and communities as possible and moving that forward. Here are just ways that you can get a hold of us. And then I will have my email here at the end. If you guys, I don't see anyone taking photos, so I actively, but you can find us at redlinemaryland.com at any time. Okay, we do have one picture, and then we're going to get to some questions, and then I just want to say thank you, at least before we get to the questions. So I hope I am on time.
You're good.
And happy to answer some more questions. If we need to go back, we can.
All right, so I actually, going back to that slide.
All right, well, that's what I figured. We might have some interest here.
So only one of them is going down Route 40 and the other is going to get rid of the grass on the side of the Route 40.
So we have some design alternatives, and it's partial, it's what's within the right of way. So yeah, so we're still looking at what that exactly looks like within the design. So these are the kind of configurations that we're working through at the moment. So we don't have any, at this point. Like, we're working through what those options are with the amount of space.
They'll be surface level.
So yes, these would be surface, yes.
And then
I'm sorry, what? Oh, okay, sorry.
it is going down Pratt Street no longer an option.
That is, I just didn't show all of the different alignment options for all the different corridors. We have slides like this throughout every single segment, and they are all online, and they were all what was produced for our open houses in the fall. So we've kind of gone through that publicly, and there still are resources at redlinemaryland.com where you can go and look at section by section what those different options are.
This option is new? I don't think I
No, this was part of the fall open house.
realize it's going to be
Yeah, and so, yeah, and this was kind of like, we were still kind of working out some of the alternatives here because there's a lot to work.
And where's the money?
Sorry?
Where's the money coming from?
All right, that's a great question. I want to hear that part. Listen to me, that's what we hear, right? Where's the money, right? And so, and I would just say, one, the governor has been incredibly supportive of this project. And two, I think we've all publicly heard about like how the budget, the seriousness of our budget this year was, what a session we had. The outcome of which was, the governor would, I think, and the legislation of Maryland really worked hard to fund MTA, including a state of good repair. So it really positions us well for us to pursue federal funding for this project, which is the plan. And so we are going to be applying within the CIG program, the Capital Investment Grants Program, through the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. And that requires us to kind of go through a process which includes an environmental process called NEPA. And then kind of, we have a previously approved NEPA, but and then we will continue to go, which is, let me back up on the NEPA things. There's a lot of environmental regulations that we have to kind of go through to be able to get approved into that program. We are working on those reports as we speak. So that is ongoing. And we're trying to maximize with the investment that the state has made into MTA and into this project, we're positioning ourselves to be a strong candidate.
So this is dependent upon federal money.
That's right. And as you know, there's a lot of uncertainty there, but all we can do is be prepared and ready to create the strongest application to get that passed. Jonathan?
You talked about NEPA. Have any of the requirements of NEPA changed with the new federal administration?
Not at this point. Other than the staffing, the people who are staffed to do. So.
Let's go to Janet and then Juan.
Hi, good evening, Sal.
To the, I guess, the tunnel underground, why was that changed in, our community feels that it would create more harm to have something, right by our homes? And so what were you guys prepared to do to address some of them? But we're working on it. We can't correct harm by making.
So if I recall, Ms. Allen, I think this bottom third is your preference. It's the one that would be furthest away and in the middle of the trench. So it would be down below where the freeway is now. And then there would be elevators that would be able to at the station.
So there's not going to be underground.
The underground sections, let's just bring up the slide here. It's really, Coates Lane was the area that we were evaluating.
It's going to be the initial one before Governor Holton scrapped the plan. He didn't have underground in this area after Fremont Avenue.
So as you can see, it's these dash lines here is kind of the closest that we have to that original 2015 alignment before Governor Hogan canceled the project. Was here along Coast Lane. And then you can kind of see going into down.
So why these areas give that consideration and not our?
That's a great question. I think part of it is you can't tunnel everywhere, and it's where we had the most operational consequences. I mean, we could, but it would be extensively cost prohibitive. And then just, we have a lot of space on the highway. I think people have talked about the highway somewhere for a long time as far as its impact, what it actually does. So utilizing that space, again, it has less impacts.
That's what we're looking at, utilizing the space. But the space was supposed to be with underground.
Right.
And then you're saying,
Well, look, and I'm hearing this out, and I think this is part of why this would kind of talk about the potential for this exact space. And so we want to work with you as far as the red line meeting to deliver on that vision in the future. And I think this is a small start of like something bigger. And that's what West Baltimore is, right?
Matt, Janet, if we can just open the floor one more time before we go to the next presentation. I think Bree had a question.
Yes, can you go back to our slide with the three options?
Oh, I'm so sorry. One next. So sorry.
Oh, I was just wondering, what is the criteria by which the selection will be made? What types of things go to influence which will improve what?
A lot of it is, again, are kind of measures of effectiveness. So it's ridership, travel time, impact, cost, future operation, maintenance. So it's all of the things that you've kind of seen us, how we were debating around kind of bus versus light rail. There is very some. Thank you. Yes, of course.
Bree will be our lab.
Oh, you going the wrong way. Bree, it's all online for you. If you want the full list.
So, and I'm glad how we started correctly. So just so that I'm clear, the first two options are proposing filling in and bringing light rail to the surface. And the third option is proposing to leave it as the trench and then have one lane traveling in the median. Is that right?
So let me just put it into like this. Surface is kind of like how we're kind of defining it here is like not, right? So these will all be surface options. Okay, so running at the ground level, or as you said, in the trench. Okay, we'll just call this one in the trench. All right. And then the others would be on the street. And it's a combination of what we have within the right of way. And we don't have design on that, right? So we have design options. So we can use the entire space within that roadway and that extra additional space. So it's like carving out the right dimensions for the needs. And as you can see, these are different, right? So those needs are very different.
Okay.
And so that we don't have a discussion of that, but we're looking at evaluating at those sort of strengths within the space. But yeah, we're looking at all of that space together comprehensively to make the decision about what it was. Yeah, again, we don't have that design.
And Matt, there will be another CAT meeting that's open to the public so that we can discuss in further depth about the alignments. Okay.
Well, let's just clarify that you're not filling in anything in those two. It's current surface streets. Right.
All right, thanks for all the questions. We're going to go to our next presentation.
Should be good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me? Excellent. So my name is Odessa Phillip. I am the outreach lead for the Frederick Douglass Tunnel Program. Just want to take a moment to acknowledge the folks from our team that are here present with me. Keisha Farrell, who's also working on community outreach, Janae Franklin, a part of the Amtrak's outreach team, and Zach Billett, as well, part of stakeholder engagement. So a little bit beyond just public engagement.
No, I don't think it's sharing on the WebEx right now. Sorry.
No problem.
All right. Now the folks on the WebEx should be able to see.
There we go.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
So just wanted to make sure I acknowledge those folks that are on our team that are present today. Just want to give you a little bit of an overview of what's happening on the Frederick Douglass Tunnel Program. Quick question, how many have been to a Frederick Douglass Tunnel Program meeting? Okay, excellent. Just wanted to get us a little bit of perspective as to in the room. So I'm going to give you a quick recap of that program, talk a bit about what we've done for community engagement, similar to Matt, talk about what's happening in terms of construction. I think one of the biggest parts for what we want to share is we are actively in construction. We're not in planning. So that does definitely have a different impact. And we really want people to have a better understanding of what that impact is, how they can get involved, find out information, how you can contact our team. And that information is going to be shared later. But what I will tell you is when you call the Frederick Douglass Tunnel number, it is myself, Keisha, and other members of our team that are actually answering the phone. If you have an issue actually in the field, it is the same group that is coming out and meeting community members at their homes to answer questions. So just want to make sure you have perspective on how our touch is really physical, and we're really available to the community. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen with traffic. There's going to be some traffic impacts, and we want to be really transparent about that. And then a little bit about workforce development. We know how important jobs are to this community, essential, really. And kind of what that rollout of the workforce development efforts is looking like, and then I'll have time for some questions. That doesn't want to advance that way. All right. Thank you, guys. There we go. So a little bit about Amtrak. Amtrak is America's railroad. We're serving 500 destinations across 46 states, 3 Canadian provinces. We did something today, so I at least know the 4 states where we don't operate, if anyone ever wants to know that. 22,000 employees plus, and then 33 million passengers per year are traveling along the Northeast Corridor. So really important to understand Amtrak's Northeast Corridor is kind of the busiest corridor around the country. But let's talk about a little bit of where we're coming from. The Baltimore and Potomac Tunnel is over 150 years old, right? So that existing tunnel connects West Baltimore Mark to Baltimore Penn Station. And so it's reaching that end of useful life period. I know you've heard that phrase before, but we're carrying that 14 million Mark Penn Line and Amtrak passengers on that Northeast Corridor. That last number is all Amtrak. This number is just what's happening on the Northeast Corridor. But it's aging, right? The infrastructure is starting to age. There's some reasons that trains are delayed, but I want to talk specifically about the fact that we've got 2 tracks in a single tunnel bore. And that means that you don't have redundancy, because in the event that you have to shut down for any reason, you've got to shut down the whole Northeast Corridor, right? So that's something really to keep in mind, and that creates those frequent outages, and we don't want that. That is not good for moving people through the system. The existing BNP tunnel is also the biggest rail bottleneck between Washington, D.C. and New Jersey. So that is a real concern for Amtrak. So we went through the NEPA process. So you just had Matt reference NEPA. We went through the NEPA process, and the selected alternative is what you see here with the green line, the dashes being where we're in tunnel underground. The existing tunnel is what you see as the gray line with the purple dashes, right, being the tunnel area. So one of the things I just talked about of being one of the biggest bottlenecks is because of the sharp turns that are on the existing Northeast Corridor. Trains can't really turn on a dime. So when you see this sharp curve, when trains are approaching Baltimore, they have to slow down to 30 miles per hour in order to get through the existing BNP tunnel. We know that trains currently are operating upwards of 80, 90, 100 miles per hour. So that is one part of what this program is going to help address. This smoother curve allows trains to go at a faster speed. The other thing I will say is it's going to be 2 tunnel bores instead of 1. So 1 track in each tunnel bore. That means you've got that redundancy, resiliency that you're hoping for. We also have improved railroad and roadway infrastructure as part of this program. So not only are we going to have new railroad bridges, which you're going to see here by these blue, I guess it's kind of a squarish, but not really. So by these symbols that you see here at Warwick Avenue, Franklin, and Mulberry Streets, those are railroad bridges. That means that the rail is on that bridge and it's crossing over a Baltimore City street. Then there are 2 roadway bridges where the roadway is carrying traffic at Edmondson Avenue and West Lafayette. So those are 2 city-owned roads that we will be replacing, and those bridges, those structures will be replacing. Additional 11 other Baltimore City roadways will have to do modifications for as part of this program. So just want to make sure we make that people understand that. Two really important features, new ADA accessible West Baltimore Mark Station. Right now, you have to walk up a lot of steps and it is not ADA accessible, so people can't really use the station who may have that need. So the new station really is something that we want to make sure that people understand and we want to highlight. Correct. It will be what I would call a station as opposed to a stop. There are a lot of elements that are included that make it a station. Elevators, actual enclosed inside waiting areas, right? So the things that have not been there before, I think all are really key elements of what that new West Baltimore Mark Station will look like. So wanted just to make sure that we highlighted kind of what that program overview is. There's a lot that's included as part of the program. Important for us, but also important to you is why is this beneficial to you? What are the benefits of the program? I'm going to talk really quickly about a few of them, not all of these, but there's a $50 million community investment program. This did come about as part of Amtrak's work following the NEPA studies that occurred. So $50 million in community investments. That program is slated to launch later this year. It does take time to launch a program like this. And so that's just something to keep in mind. It's not something we can do quickly, but we also don't want to do it wrong. So there's a lot of focus on us getting it done correctly. One of the other things I want to emphasize is something that's going to happen later this month, which is access to salvage materials from some of the properties that we did acquire. So those are historic buildings. And so we're making that historic salvage from those buildings available free of cost to the communities that Rosemont and Midtown Edmondson. So those communities can access those materials for property improvements that they need to do. That's something that's also really important. The program is named in honor of Frederick Douglass with the permission of his family. So it wasn't something we did without seeking proper permission. So I think those are some really important pieces to talk about. And then not to ever reduce or forget the increase of jobs. So bringing new jobs into the region. Just a little bit about community engagement. We've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that the community understands the impacts of the program. Really differently, as I mentioned, we're in construction. So that means we need people to understand where there are going to be traffic impacts, where we're going to have the property, where we're starting to gate off all of our work, right? So we've got security fencing, a lot of elements to try to make sure that people are protected, but also that our contractor team is protected. We also have a project website. Everybody knows that you do that. We do social media as well. We have a not toll-free, we have a Baltimore number because it rings all the time. We have a local phone number that people can call. We send out construction updates. We also have a program to do text messaging where as we're getting closer to doing all of this traffic impacts, we want people to sign up for text messages and you'll be able to get information. That's at the end of our slides. We do host quarterly in-person and virtual meetings. We separate them. It's not one hybrid meeting. The next one is June 2nd virtually and in person June 11th at Mary Ann Winterling Elementary School. Both meetings happen at 6 p.m. Mary Ann Winterling is on Betlou 220. I'm 90% sure. Yeah, but it's on North Betlou. And so we want people to also ask us, invite us to your community meetings. So not only do we host meetings, if you've got a meeting, we are also willing to come. Just kind of showing some of that community engagement that we've had, public meetings, it's usually me. But also in the middle, what you're seeing is the community meeting that we attended in Sandtown, Winchester. So for us, it's super important that not only are we asking you to come to us, but we're coming to you to talk about the programs. Another element is stewardship. Amtrak really takes seriously that we want to give back to the community. We're working next to you, and we want to be a good neighbor. The last couple of weeks have been pretty busy. We've done art in the park at Mary Ann Winterling, a cleanup in both Druid Heights and Requity. So Requity is an organization that organized a community cleanup. So those are things that we were really trying to make sure we're functioning on. Okay, let's talk construction because there's a lot happening. You know, we had to start out by clearing the site, getting everything ready for our construction equipment and our crews to come on board. We do have 2 different contractors on board to date. Clark Stacy Whitbeck is constructing one piece, and that's a joint venture between 2 companies. And then the Kiewit Shea, it's also a joint venture between 2 well-known and respected tunneling companies. So those are the contractors that are on board. Some of the work that we have that is really starting is the construction of a utility siphon, which is really going to take the utilities under Amtrak's existing Northeast corridor. That work has started. It's amazing in terms of the feat as an engineer. It's kind of an engineering feat to be able to see that. It's really an honor to work on a program like this. One of the big picture pieces I think that everyone needs to understand is the work for those 2 bridges I mentioned at Franklin and Mulberry. In order for us to do the construction of a new bridge at Franklin and Mulberry, we have to close parts of the roadway in order to do that construction, right? So we understand that's going to be a huge undertaking and an impact on traffic throughout West Baltimore. We're working now on how we can make sure everyone understands what that looks like. Mulberry is starting this spring. And so we're starting to do some of that work. And then Lafayette will come after that. So the bridge itself will be constructed next spring, but we have to do all the build-up work in order to get through that. We also need to lower both Franklin and Mulberry for that to happen. Tunneling will be done with tunnel boring machines, and those aren't slated to be delivered until next fall. Actually lowering the roadway. So in order for that, you've got the bridge that's going to be overhead, right? And that's going to carry the railroad on it. But we have to actually lower Mulberry Street and Franklin Street. So actually drop their elevation, the grade of both of those roadways. It already is a hill, so you're already chasing grade coming down both Franklin, coming down if you're going east towards downtown, you're already coming down a hill. So we're just coming a little bit lower there. Yeah. Okay, so when you start looking up, so all of our work always includes addressing any kind of both erosion and sediment controls, what we're doing in terms of coming down a hill. And Rosemont is right up on the hill, but it also includes all of the drainage work as part of the civil engineering parts that are included. Yeah. But that's a really great question, and I'll make sure that we add it to the list of potential questions we can get asked so that we have better answers on the details around how they're going to handle drainage, because I think that's a very reasonable question. So if you look in the purple circle here, that's kind of where we are right now. That's where the heavy lift of the work is happening. The utility siphon I just mentioned is a tunnel that's taking those utilities under the existing Northeast corridor. We're coming up in that green line here. So there's a lot of work. There are traffic detours. The upcoming one at Franklin and Mulberry I mentioned is down in that orange peaches rectangle at the bottom, but there's a lot of work going on in North Pulaski, North Payson. Roadways are closed. We've got some variable message signs out there. There's work on Harlem, but we've also completely enclosed our work site in that area. So there's a lot happening there. We're doing our best to make sure we're telling people about that work, but it's an ongoing everyday effort to make sure people understand. So what you see here in orange are those street closures that we currently have on Payson, Pulaski, Harlem, Mosier. So people are having to navigate their way around. Now, a lot of those streets that we have closed, there have been acquisitions of properties. So people have been relocated as they need to be in order to be out of the tunnel. We only do purchase properties we must purchase, right? So if those properties are in the way of the program, that's the only ones. Amtrak really works hard to acquire properties in negotiation and not by eminent domain, right? The goal is to have a completed contract. So some of the things we're doing to protect the community: pre-construction inspections for those properties that are really adjacent to the work. All of those pre-construction inspections involve getting permission from the property owner, accessing the property, documenting the existing condition, and then providing that free of charge to that property owner. In the event that people realize a little late, they say, hey, you know what, I didn't think so at first, they can still come back. That is open to everyone. We want to make sure that all of the property owners that are eligible have access to this information.
And so that is what particular streets the property owners get that.
It depends. It's not just based on the whole street. So it really is proximity to the tunnel itself. anyone who's eligible will get a letter. It's not just US mail. We actually send the letters UPS. So that people will have access to it and you're not kind of having to go to the post office trying to get there when it's open, you know, that complicated situation, but you'll get it by way of UPS and FedEx, and they'll tell you how to schedule an appointment and work directly with that property owner to get access to that person. Another thing that we are doing with the permission of each of those same property owners, so the same ones that I just mentioned, we are putting this prism, what you see on the outside of properties if they've given permission. This helps us to see if there's been any deflection of that building during construction. It is an active activity so that it's happening. If something happens, we will see it. That's given by computer back to our team so we can stop the work, figure out what caused the issue and address it. So it is an active piece. It is not happening at the end. This is the building, that's deflection. Does that make sense? If it moves, and there's a threshold. So we're looking for the smallest threshold, right? The threshold amount we're getting to is well before it's really a large scale damage. So if we start to see that, we'd be able to pause, tell the contractor, hey, we're seeing something, they'll be able to fix it. So that's all through the contractor's team. That I cannot answer, but I will write that down as a list so we can come back with the answer to that, what would cause that deflection. It's something from construction activity, but don't really know what really causes it because it could vary. There could be any number of reasons. The other thing that we are doing is measuring noise and vibration. We want to know what sound is coming, what sound is coming off of the site. As soon as we understand the sound coming off of the site, again, there are thresholds that we're staying within. If we're coming higher than we're expecting, we're able to tell whether that impact is caused by a bus going by, right? Because that's going to have some, or if there's something really coming off of our work, we're able to capture it. Yes.
So what happens with the homeowner that they don't want their?
Excellent question. So the reason I say the protection is to the homeowner and to the program is if the homeowner decides they don't want to get it done, then they have less to negotiate with in that conversation. So that is why we're trying to encourage everyone who's eligible to do it. That does not mean to say that, okay, 6 months in, they're like, oh, maybe I should have done it, and they do it. But now that's really where you're starting from, which is the unfortunate part. So the earlier you do it, the better you are. We started the outreach effort on this about a year ago. So we've been working for over a year trying to get people involved. Mr. Baylor.
What about air?
About air quality. So we are, and I'm looking back at Zach, air quality. There's a part of the work that we are monitoring it, but it's not in the same, it's not these same tools to monitor air quality. But I need to get, yeah. Yeah, it is part of these. I can't remember which one. So we're measuring all of the three because we do still have requirements under the NEPA and the laws that are required.
Yeah, so just so that that's a competitive representation, we have a representation back for this. So we'll take, there are also some questions online. So Odessa, why don't you finish your question online and then maybe like one or two.
Okay, no problem. So utility siphon, I already described it. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. We have to construct 2 vertical shafts and then you've got a horizontal tunnel that takes it through. That's the whole point on that slide. Just kind of showing you the scale of what this work is. So they've already started this excavation. I don't have the new photos, but I will by this public meeting of what it really looks like, but it looks almost exactly like this, where that utility siphon is in place. And this work already started, and I'll be able to share that at our public meeting June 2nd or June 11th. That's like my shameless plug. Some of the things that we are doing in the area where we're doing some of this larger scale demolition work, we do have temporary construction noise walls up. Something good to know and have in mind about that's some of the things that we're able to do. So we've got a 24-foot tall barrier wall on Spedden, and then another 16-foot one on North Pulaski Street. So that's that's some of the protections that we're taking during construction for you. This is kind of what those noise walls look like, and they're really out here. I mentioned in terms of traffic areas, so I just wanted to put the slides for you to be able to see. So these are where some of that actual work is happening on Pulaski, Payson, that I just mentioned a moment ago. And this is kind of just listing what that activity is. It's kind of sidewalk and curb, clearing the site, getting ourselves prepared. Mobilization at Franklin and Mulberry is expecting this spring into next winter. We know that we're going to have to close West Mulberry Street. Ongoing road closures, you can really see them here. So North Payson, North Bryce, North Pulaski, with people being directed around Harlem, North Payson, Lafayette, and Hamilton. Yes, yes. And just so you know, the people who are living on these streets, we are talking to them. So that is a regular part. Our team does grassroots engagement, meaning we're doing door knocking with the contractor. So we're sending someone who looks and sounds like us that can talk about the program along with the contractor who could be available to answer any of those technical questions. Just one other thing on this detour, we're working with DOT, MTA, SHA, as well as the Maryland Transportation Authority, trying to help people detour around the work. Very important for us to talk with West Baltimore, with the MTA about what's happening at West Baltimore MARC to make sure they're available. I mentioned workforce development. That effort is really getting started. The contractors have workforce development efforts, as well as our program team have workforce development efforts. The community investment program, that's also a part of that community investment program. And so we're looking really hard to make sure that everyone is getting all of the information. This is also ramping up, right? So how we do workforce development, how we do it successfully as part of the program is really key and important to us. So as we have more information, we're making sure to share it.
I appreciate you because we've been dealing with us for a while. But the last community meeting, the group mostly talked about instead of doing the traditional piece of working with a status group and development, think about the much smaller groups that are more connected to the people, but they still look for the show and still doing traditional stuff.
Actually, it's a combination of the two, and I would say that the community investment program allows us to do that differently. So yes, we're working with established organizations, but as part of the community investment program and how we're able to delegate funds, anybody who qualifies as a 501c3 organization can also apply for funds under the program. And as they apply for those funds, that does give an opportunity for some smaller groups to bring it to. Absolutely. Yeah, so we actually have an entire outreach, it hasn't started yet, but we have an entire outreach plan set for the community investment program once we have the funds. Brendan, do you want to tell me the questions online?
So why don't we go to two more work members and then I'll do the rapid fire.
Okay, no problem.
So we're just gonna pass it around. How's that sound? All right.
Hi, I just had a question. I was listening to Today with Dr. K, and I followed up with a little information online. According to the New York Times, Elon Musk's Boring Company is in talks with government over Amtrak project, which is the specific project, and with the FRA, with a goal to reduce the cost by about $2.5 billion. And also it might possibly affect the naming of the project. Can you tell us a little bit about what Amtrak's negotiations are or what their stance is as far as Elon Musk's concerned?
Value engineering is part of any engineering program or that is listed, right? So you go through the value engineering process. We've been doing that for over a year. We're not in talks with any one entity. More in line with what we are doing is looking at value engineering materials. So how do we reduce costs? Important part, we're doing that anyway. We've been doing that. That's probably the most specific answer.
One more question from the work group? Anybody? Okay. Okay. So we do have a couple questions online. I'll give them to you real quick. So when are the Amtrak community investment grants applications going to be released? That's one. And then two is, can you talk about the payments to property owners for their subsurface rights?
Yes. Okay, so I can talk about those. So this community investment program, that's what I was just talking about, the community investment program. And I think what's really important is it takes time, right? So we have been working to get through a lot of technical We now are pulling together. What wants people to be able to apply for funds and be successful. So a part of that is the public engagement that needs to go along with it. Our hope is that they're going to be later this year. Our expectation is they're going to be later this year. The question is Q3 or Q4. I don't know the exact time. So the goal is to get them done as quickly as possible. Our goal is to be doing these programs alongside construction, not separate. Second question was.
Can you talk about the payments to property owners for the subsurface rent?
Contractors been working really hard. The real estate team, unfortunately, we're not able to join us today, but they've been working really hard for the subsurface rights. Really importantly to understand, subsurface rights are simply the rights that are beneath your home, right, in order to be able to have access to putting a tunnel, right? That is not really, it's a hard discussion. It's not really of value to anyone but Amtrak because there's no other market for those rights. But so those payments are being made in, again, I said, not in eminent domain, but in negotiation with property owners. Property owners are given maps that explain exactly the area that they need that work from. Amtrak to go through the true process in any property negotiation. They're doing that. Property owners are given a letter. They're given all of that information, and then that negotiation can occur.
Great. Thank you, Odessa. All right.
I just want to do one more thing on this, which was just to show you for folks that were taking photos. Now, can I move it? There we go. So text messaging for anyone who wanted that slide. FDT North, East, South, for construct gives you text messaging about all of those projects. And I will make sure I send this to you so you can share it. And then the other is signing up for construction notices. So the QR code you see on the right, and I'll make sure that you have both of these available to you. Follow us on social media and the phone number 443. I just want to make sure I say it for everybody. 443-423-1115. And CERT is how you can call me whenever they want.
Just one quick question. So with the train station, we're going to be down there, like on the station. Ticket
Sales. Right, so you would still operate like the MTA's ticketing system. But I thank you for asking, because you actually got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I know other people might have some questions, Sonia. We can connect directly afterwards. That's totally fine. But in the interest of time, we need to get through two more presentations. So Kyle from Department of Planning is going to go.
Thank you.
You'll just tap here. Yeah, I just have to get it shared on all of these. I'm gonna turn it on. Just give me 1 second. Sydney. Okay, here we go. And here we go. Okay, you should be good.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Kyle Legs. I'm the planner for this particular area. I'm with the Baltimore City Department of Planning. And I'd like to talk with you about the Thriving Communities program that we at the City of Baltimore have been working with these communities in this area for the past 2 years. I'll be brief, because I'm going to get you to some more of the active projects going on. This particular project is coming to a close as of the last 2 years, but the Thriving Communities program is a program awarded to the City of Baltimore, our department, in 2023, and provided 2 years of technical assistance to disadvantaged communities along the West Baltimore highway to nowhere. You'll note also that later on in the presentation, it had to be connected to sort of a transportation network. So it's a transit-centered oriented program. And so it connected to the West Baltimore mark as one of the eligibility criteria. The goal of the program was to address some of the negative effects caused by the highway to nowhere and to try and capitalize on some of the benefits of the technical assistance. Just to kind of cover some of the inner workings of the particular assistance, we work closely with WSP and the Accelerators for America and the U.S. Department of Transportation team. We had 2 community partners that were eligible. Those were the ECO, the Emerson Community Organization, as well as the Anchor Group. The Anchor Group consisted of 3 pretty much groups in this area, the Fair Street Outreach Area, Franklin Square, and the Boyd Booth community, and some of the local affiliates. Those groups meet here primarily, and so we're sort of, back at home with terms of meeting space and so forth, that we met with these groups and organizations with for the past 2 years. Again, that's my name there. I'm the Southwest District Planner, and some of my colleagues, one of my colleagues was just here, Nick Shubin, he may have had to leave. He covers the Franklin Square community, and Tweak Bolden covers the Western District. I will also recognize one of our ECO partners here, Jonathan Sachs, is in the audience. And I want to thank Jonathan Sachs for being here tonight. And he can answer any questions if you have those for this area as well. So, I'm sorry, what was the question? I'll get to some of that. Yes, thank you. And so here is largely the footprint for the West Baltimore Mart area, essentially about a quarter mile around the West Baltimore station. And that pretty much consisted of the footprint. We couldn't go much larger than that because we were limited to 2 community partners. So we had to kind of focus it to the main groups that were operating around the West Baltimore Mart station. Here's an example of the one of the tours we conducted. We looked at multiple sites in terms of what we would look to focus in on in terms of the program, providing technical assistance to the community. And so we looked at a number of projects. We looked at a lot of traffic calming. We looked at whether or not we could improve certain schools in the area, namely Lockham and Bundy. I looked at Bryce Street, which came up earlier for some vacant lot improvements. And we also looked at vacant housing and buildings in the area and where we could begin to target some resources in the future. The capacity building assistance that we undertook were largely monthly meetings, connected with our partner team. We did an existing conditions report that includes neighborhood plans. We looked at zoning, transit in the area, crash data, vacant buildings and neighborhood profiles. We created a funding playbook, which is essentially a lot of grants that may be eligible for this particular community to apply for and utilize. We held a number of collaborative meetings with some of the groups that are presenting tonight, as well as Baltimore Housing, the city's Department of Transportation, and Office of Sustainability, to include the State Department of Housing and Community Development, as we talk about housing and what areas we could focus in terms of improvements in that area. We also looked at a lot of traffic calming studies around the West Baltimore area. We looked at streets like Payson, Pulaski, where it intersects with Mulberry Street, Pulaski Street, and a slightly larger footprint. One of the other major components of what we did was assess the capacity of the community organization. So we saw where there was a need to add more capacity to some of these groups, be it through, establishing their ability to, let's say, pursue grants that could bring on, let's say, a grant writer, or actually help them in the system with writing grants for their particular concerns or efforts in their area. And one grant in particular that they're assisting the ECO group with is the Baltimore Vacant Reduction Initiative Grant. And so just an example of one of the grants that the group helped us with. And then the group also felt that there was a lot of planning going on at the time with all these plans and the existing plans that were done. So one of the plans that came out of this ended up being a green print plan that community felt was important to begin to identify some of the areas to target, let's say, when they do get resources and funding. And so you see the West Baltimore Mark Station area green print plan that was produced toward the end. Some of the community revitalization projects that we worked in collaboration with Baltimore Housing on were the 1,900 and 2,000 blocks of Holland Street, which is just right outside here. The Department of Housing is going to be targeting acquisition and for those vacant parcels and vacant properties to help beautify that area. The fire station is going to be renovated. So we wanted to try and focus on what could help support this particular community center and enhance the properties around it. We also work with them on targeted properties in the 2100 block of Vine Street, where we're going to be working with developers to rehab a lot of the vacant properties on that street. And then we're targeting efforts in the ECO area as well, as they're working with Baltimore Housing for more of a planning strategy about what to target in that area. As I mentioned earlier, and as we're hearing about tonight, we're working in tandem with all of the projects that are being talked about tonight. The WBU project, we work closely with them at the start of the project to actually help apply for it. One of our planners, former planners, was instrumental in working on the application to apply for that particular grant. And so we're excited about tonight's meeting because it allows that collaboration to take place. Again, the Red Line project, Amtrak, state DOT projects, and the traffic calming in the community, all of the projects that we're working in collaboration with to help strengthen this particular area. Some of the local updates for this particular project in terms of neighboring projects, the Pearl Homes, which is a resident relocation that's nearing completion, the demolition of which is going to begin toward the end of the summer. The city has a commitment to the public infrastructure for $16 million in over 7 years through the FY 26 capital improvement program. And then HEBC, the Housing Authority in Baltimore City, is looking towards a 2026 choice neighborhoods application. My colleague was going to talk to this slide. Yeah, he had to leave, so but I can answer any questions we have as best as I can. So in terms of local projects, we just had a ground ribbon cutting today with the West Baltimore Renaissance factory building that took place today. I just came from there before I was at this meeting. It's going to be providing workforce development, mentoring, food access, food preparation and training, health-related services, and some of the organizations that are affiliated with it: Baltimore Promise, Safe Streets, the VSP program, National Alliance for Mental Health and Illness, Innovation Works, LifeBridge, Health Center for Hope, and of course, the West Baltimore Renaissance Foundation. And then, so, you have questions? Yes.
We're actually gonna hold questions on Kyle's presentation until after this one. Just to
Go back to the
We're at 7:10 right now, so.
Sure.
Amy Richardson is here to talk.
Let me just allow her to take a picture real quick.
We're
Sure. Yep. You good? Second.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jamie Richardson. I work at the MTA in our planning office, and I work closely with Kyle and Matt and Tabia and Odessa and everybody else here. But I'm presenting on MTA's West Baltimore Transit-Oriented Development Plan. So I don't have any slides, but that's just because we're in the kind of beginning of our process and starting out. But MTA won a federal grant to start a transit-oriented development plan around the West Baltimore Mark Station. So with the tunnel project starting construction, with the red line and planning, sometimes development comes with these transportation investments. And so we want to make sure that we're a few steps ahead of thinking about, okay, if people are interested in development and we want to see more people and places for people to go shop, go to the doctor's office, grocery stores. We as MTA want that to be near our transit stops and stations. So we want to work with our colleagues at State Department of Transportation, Planning, and work with you guys, the community, on what could this kind of look like after all these transportation investments come in? What other development would we like to see, and how does that fit in with what's already here and what we want to come into the community? So we're just starting out with our process of hiring folks to help us work on this plan now, and then we hope in the fall to come out probably with one of these projects as well to do more community outreach of, okay, what do we want to see? You know, how are these other projects taking shape? So that's my spiel about the transit-oriented development plan, and we can either do Kyle's questions first, or I can take some questions now, but whatever works, Brendan.
I think we should open up to general questions for both of your presentations now. Yeah. Actually, so if you mute, I'll pass it. Around so people online can hear.
So I have a question, in regards to the ice house that's there. So with all of this development happening in that area, what are the plans, or are there any plans for the ice house? Because it would be a sword to let it stay the way it is.
Yeah, I don't have any plans right now. I know things have like come and gone. You see different newspaper articles and stuff, but I think that's one of the things we want to group of, and ice houses privately owned, so they do what they want. You know, what would be nice, and MTA and the city of that space, but like.
What about,
okay,
I'm sorry,
I said like the parking lot. Yeah.
well, anything, so, I'm just saying anything other than that, what it is. Framework, worked in the living community last year, 2 years. Around that.
Yeah, and that's one of our first steps of, what else has already been done? Okay, there that, and now it's 2025. Okay. Who owns it now? What's there? Do it for the next 5 years. State. Interested in like real estate. Have the
for wholesale. I've had guys house for 15 years, but maybe I'll have to.
Oh, yeah. On the transportation or enhance the transportation piece and serve the people.
We're trying to.
A
Colleagues,
I think, oh,
So trying to bring
certain questions in different realms and see committees. I just don't see, in, the line that they at, where see, then there's no category here. It's confusing. And by next, about to start construction on stuff, now we should know something, that's concrete. So I'm just confused.
I think there is a lot.
It is a lot.
We're coming to each other's meetings, things on that one place, because, yeah, there's a ton going on. Tunnel, red lines, do they're working together. Working with file department planning, me working with Matt, both working at MTA, she working. So I can't speak for all of the process. It's kind of like DOP too, maybe that's something I can take back. So you can really see, like, okay, 2025, 2026, what's happening? So there's a lot of construction and stuff happening right now, and a lot of
In our community, they talk about investment communities, and y'all look see to get vacancies in that neighborhood. We know what the needs are, and we're in spaces we're not really at and being told, we all trying to, deal with what that's going to help bring it back to, so it's our voices are
What's separating? What's the boundaries of the?
And we have time for two more questions. We're really getting up on time, so 3 minutes.
but our boundaries can be what we're working on.
so where those boundaries.
So this is the West Baltimore Mark Station here, and this, I think it's like just a half mile. Half mile, and people usually could walk like quarter-ish mile is the general
So does that go all the way down to Martin Luther King? Where's the end?
all the way everywhere. Yeah.
It's the last
So
kind of
train station. Because I was even at one of the Mark Train meetings, and I was told that my neighborhood was outside of the boundaries, like some part of Franklin Square was in the boundaries. So when you had talked about earlier that community, that $50 million community money, when I was asking about that, there are projects that we are working on in our community where we could use some of that funding around our play spaces, and it's like, oh, you're kind of out of that catchment. If you maybe connect with people in Hall Park, you know, you might be able to, but I'm between Marlboro and Saratoga, so like, how are we out on the boundaries? Like, how do we get up?
Share maybe how we should be to keep the conversation going, but we're gonna go to Bree and then Juan super quick.
So this is, I guess, more not necessarily for these two folks, but just in general, and really more so for the Red Line folks, but I guess they've since left. I wasn't, okay, I didn't see you. Okay, yeah, come on up because so I wasn't at this last meeting, but that was my first time, and I sit on the Red Line, stewardship committee as well as Ms. Sonia. That was my first time seeing the Red Line being proposed above ground. Am I the only one? Did I miss something? Or okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. Okay, so that I think just want to echo Ms. Sonia's feeling. I feel angst because I live directly on Route 40, and I don't feel like I have a clear understanding of how decisions are being made. Like I'm on the actual committee, and I still don't know what's going on. That's concerning as someone who owns property and whose well-being will be impacted by this major infrastructure project. It's just unclear how decisions are being made. It's like, oh, we have these community listening sessions, but then I don't see the thread of how like valid concerns that are being brought up are being incorporated into the plans that are being proposed. I feel like these meetings are ceremonial in nature, for lack of other words, but not actually not decision-making meetings. And from the onset, when we started this process, we asked, can we see the engineering drawings? Can we talk to an engineer? Like, can we actually understand the options? Has that happened yet? Okay.
So can
all right,
work
that's
make
my-
a recommendation to Department of Transportation now about moving forward, how we would like to see things shift a little?
Absolutely. One last thing. So, and this is, I think, $5 million, right? So I know I wasn't at the last meeting, but have we spoken about how that's going to be allocated? Have we reconciled how none of that funding is going to community? I don't know. So again, excuse me if I missed something and I'm like the only one who's in the dark here, but there's just a lot of feeling of like, okay, a lot of things are happening, a lot of money is moving, but the people who are actually at the table are not seeing any of it. We're unsure of how it's being allocated. It's frustrating, and it's a little bit existential also for people who actually live here. So.
No, I completely understand that. I'll say about the $85.5 million that we won. We still haven't seen a grant agreement for that. But in the next year, we will be deciding collectively what the final concepts will be for that. That's what this process is about. And
So the big thing that I heard from last meeting was that, because I had that same concern, is that the process that we've been supposed to be going under, the planning process, which has been delayed because, contractor, consultant, all this kind of stuff. But that $185 million total project cost is going to go toward what that vision is, as opposed to what was in the grant application. So kind of
correct those concepts in the application.
So, I mean, I know for a fact, if you asked every single one of us, we'd say, okay, put at least 10 million of that towards community organizations, at least, right? Like, would that be something that you all are willing to commit to? Like, what would be the planning process to say we're going to allocate 10 million of that 85
The question is, does the grant allow that? Does the grant allow that kind of flexibility? For some grants don't.
So in the last meeting, what came down to was the fact that I think a lot of us did not feel that there was any low hanging fruit being applied to anything that's relevant that people can see. So it got down to the point of there was a festival that had happened along and near that highway to nowhere. And so we kind of got around the thought of doing something like that, because at least that could generate people.
But a festival in this like scheme of $85 million.
Well, hey, but you be surprised what a professional festival costs.
I really hate to come short. We're at 7:30. They're gonna turn off the lights,
I guess,
close the gates.
but just something to take away for next time is like, how are we changing this process?
Yep.
Because it's the same, like Ms. Stone, you said, are we wasting our time coming here?
Was one of the questions I asked when I was invited to join, was the community. And so it sounds like but it's not being put on the agenda. I don't know whether it needs to be said specifically, but it sounds like you heard enough for people where it gets a little bit more. Maybe, and I'm just gonna right now speak for myself. I mean, that's not interested in it.
And I just wanted to say that it's hard, to say how we can plan to build housing when the red line has its individual plans, the mode and, where to go, how to go, how can we even begin to think what we would like to see in it? The train has to, if we have to know exactly where that train is going to go. You know, above ground, below ground, we need to know that, you know, specifically on sides, middle, you know, you can't come up with ideas. You know, it's, so to me, though, this whole focus is about transportation. It's not about the people. It's not about housing. It's not, that's all, every part of this project is transportation. So transportation, y'all want to make sure this transportation is going to happen, you know, it's going to work, but it does not concern the people. This is what I feel. The people who live here, it doesn't concern us. You're going to get this transportation project no matter what.
So I get to raise it again, transportation dollars, these particular transportation dollars. Are there any flexibility in using those dollars other than being on?
So the names come there, just quickly, we're putting our contract with the whole team, so we have a meaningful, robust conversation about all this stuff. Got later this month, and then we're gonna have decision points from July to
I want you all to think about what you heard from people with each agency and repeat the items specifically for the work group, because that is kind of what most of us say. Is that reasonable? Oh, that's great. I mean, can you take the time to cite her and put it on?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And contact me or Stu anytime directly if you want to talk about agenda items. But in July, we're going to start moving forward. Thank you. There's some more food. If you'd like, help yourself.
Perfect.